Welcome to the newest episode of the Jesus Cartel.
Is that it? Like, there's no
Thought that was it.
transition?
I'm your co-host, Clay Russell, and with me, as always, is Andrew Skull. How are you doing, Andrew?
There you go. Oh, as promised.
There you
A
go.
Clay Russell introduction, start to the episode. I feel like you really nailed it, brother.
Yes.
You might just have a future in this.
You know, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to quit my day job today and become a podcast host.
Yeah. We will see how that turns out for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, it's now time for the Jesus Cartel, featuring the one and only Mr. Andrew Skull. How was that?
I'm not sure what to do. I almost want to scrap this and start over. Oh, fantastic.
Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
what have I been doing? My kids are sick again.
Oh.
It is just a roller coaster of health for my children. Poor things. I don't know what in the world is going on, but everybody's better now. You know, just trying to let them get through the stage of the, potential for them to be contagious, which God only knows how long that really is. And
right.
So, they've been locked away. They'll continue to be locked away, I guess. And, other than that, though, life is life, man. We've been having some really awesome things happening. I've probably developed more new relationships in the last month than I've got to develop in a while, just by putting myself in some different circles and stuff like that. And so that's been a lot of fun. I love that. And so getting to have new conversations, hear from new believers, not just new believers to Christ, but some that are just new to me.
Right.
And get to hear different perspectives and ideals and, challenge each other's thought processes on some things so we can continue to grow in the one truth, because there is only one. And, man, it's been cool. It's been a lot of fun, and so that's been good. What about you? What you got going on?
Meeting new people and getting to, explore a lot of these topics with a new audience and new people, it's a good thing, especially when it's people around our community that you kind of know but you don't know that well, and getting to know them in a more personal way is a good thing.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
man, things are good with us. We're about to wrap up our high school baseball season as far as regular season. We hope that it doesn't end anytime real soon, because we'll be getting ready for the playoffs. So just been avoiding the rain and the weather and trying to get these ball games in. In fact, I think yesterday we had like the most rain that we've ever had, and today we're supposed to have a baseball game. So, and they say we're playing. So we'll see how that goes. But no, man, everything's getting, everything's good. Sun's coming out. It's a pretty time of the year. We have a lot of wind right now, but it's a pretty time of the year. But I guess one thing that's got me excited is we've seen the Fresh Start men and women's centers keep growing in numbers lately. We've been on a rise for the last several months of intakes and people that are in our program, so that's a good thing. But then we're just seeing them grow more and more. We've seen just hear a lot more conversations in the hallways that are positive. I think one reason for that is the sheer numbers, are bigger. Another reason is a lot of people are reading the Bible together and able to discuss the same things. And then a lot of things is that we're pumping Jesus Cartel through the centers. Right. And so a lot of things that we talk about, they're talking about. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think this week there was a group that influenced you into making 2 new shirts based off of last week's conversations.
That's correct.
So that's cool, that they're listening intently.
Yep. And so if you are engaged and you like some of the things that are happening on the episode, or you think maybe you'd like to have a shirt or something that has to do with the episode, man, just let us know. We put out a Stop, Drop, and Roll shirt a few days ago. Yeah, in cursive. And also a Heavy Revy shirt, 2 things that happened by request. And, man, I love it. And we'll probably try to do some sort of shirt of the week type deal. If something that happens during the episode is in fact deemed worthy of such a thing, but yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. A lot of people are enjoying it. I like when we have new guys come into the facility, and the first time I meet them, it's them stopping me saying, "Hey, man, I really enjoyed the podcast." That's a really cool way to have a first conversation with somebody. It's like that means they just spent an hour listening to your thoughts and ideals on a situation, so they have a grasp of who you are and kind of how you carry yourself. And so it's a good leg to start a relationship out on, for sure.
And then they watch it on YouTube, so they get to see us while we do it. So they know exactly who Andrew is when he walks in the building, because they get to see him and understand that. So they get to see some of our mannerisms and how we handle ourselves, and those are all good things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And sometimes they say that they don't like the episode and they didn't like what we had to say, and I like that too.
Yeah.
I like that. I might like that more. Not because it's confrontational, but because it's like, hey, look, I'm going to have to think a little bit. You know what I mean? Like they're going to make me do a little bit of explaining I don't normally have to do. And so it really just reaffirms a lot of your thoughts and beliefs when you have to explain them. That's why it's such a good thing for, you take a high school baseball player. It'd be really beneficial for him to be spending time with the freshmen and teaching them a lot about the game and just reviewing those basics in their mind, so that, the basics are everything. They really are. And so Christianity is no different. We were talking about that this morning in Bible study. Chris Williams was actually talking about it, saying, the best in the world at anything are the ones that are the best at the basic things. He said, in Christianity, we got to make sure that we always have those basics strong and correct. He said the cool stuff happens if the basics are where they need to be. And he's right.
Yeah, he's not wrong there at all. And that's something that, like I said, I'm hearing this for the first time. I wasn't in that Bible study, but, it makes a lot of sense in the fact that we see people, the longer they've been a Christian, they start getting a little too one-dimensional sometimes, to where they get out. We call it get out in left field. They get off on on this special tangent or whatever, and they may stay there for months, to where, well, for the last 6 months I've been researching this or I've been doing that. Well, I understand that, but are you also working on the basics?
That's
are
right.
you also keeping the main thing the main thing? That's all good that you're spending a lot of time thinking about this one verse or this one, particular topic or whatever, but are you still producing fruit in all these aspects of your life? Are you still leading people to the Lord? Are you still telling them who Jesus is and what he's done for them? I mean, are you doing those basic things while you're doing these things, or have you let yourself get distracted by some obscure deal that can really only help you?
Yep.
And in turn, have you negated other people around you or what God is doing? So, Chris has got a really good point there of being really strong in the basics. We call it do the first right thing, do the next right thing, be faithful in the little things. And not saying you can't expand from there, but while you expand from there, you keep a conscious effort to still be really good at the basics.
Yep. It's a strong group of men that meets on Thursday mornings out there. I've been extremely pleased to just be able to be a part of what they have going on. I would encourage anybody, if you got free time before work on Thursday mornings, 5:30 at Shelter Insurance at Elliot Britt's office out there, man. It is a fantastic time of fellowship and really diving into the Word. It is not a hangout. It is a dive into the Word type situation.
And it's right in the middle of Winsboro. Easy to find.
Yep. And so, that's been really cool. Well, hey, look, man, I got a get to know you segment question that I'm excited about, just because it brought up some fun memories for me. And, I'm curious a little bit about, your take on the situation. And here's my question for you.
I just realized I didn't tell you which of the questions I wanted to answer.
Oh, did you change? Oh, no.
Remember we had 3?
Yeah.
And
So let me explain this to the
I
people.
only know the answer to
Yeah,
one.
let me explain this to the people so they understand what's going on. So every week I come up here or say the last few weeks we've been riding together, we talked about, and so I hadn't really been given to prepare ahead of time. And so I've had to come up with these get to know you segment questions, and then I'll pitch it to Clay, and Clay will go, I don't have an answer to that question. And so I'm like, okay. And so I come up with another question. And Clay's like, I don't have an answer to that question either. And so I'm like, oh, okay, good. So we'll come up with another question. He's like, oh, I can answer that one. And so there's 2 really good questions.
Yeah, I want to go with the first one.
That we've been battling on for weeks.
Yeah.
I've pitched this to Clay, and Clay's like, I probably have an answer, but I don't have one right now. I just need to think about it. And then we come back the next week. He's like, I didn't think about it. And so you're telling me the first question about discipleship.
Yes.
You've got an answer.
Yeah, I do.
You've
And
got
you're
an
going to
answer.
hate it.
Okay. Oh,
So
goodness.
ask the question.
Oh, goodness. Clay, who is your favorite person that you've discipled over the years?
My children.
I hate him. Yeah, I hate him. I do
I
hate
knew
him.
that
He's
you'd
right.
hate it.
He told me I was going to hate his answer to the question. He's 100% right. I do hate the answer to this question. This is such a stupid answer.
So, the reason why this is a hard question is because I've had a part of discipling people for the last, 20-something years.
Just no one notable.
And the list is really long, including Andrew Skull.
Apparently not long enough.
And so, didn't want to pick one person. And but I really was thinking about that this week, that who have I had the most influence in over that period of time? Mm-hmm. And the person that I've had the most influence is probably my wife. Mm-hmm. But, that would be weird.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'll just, pick my children, because I see my influence in all 3 of those children.
Yeah, none of
Each and
them
every
can
day.
snap.
They all made videos this week proving what they could and what they couldn't do.
It was terrible.
And another thing, I must make this. My oldest daughter, Annalise, said that, last week we talked about things that that we thought were going to be a big deal when we were young, and then we realized it wasn't. And, of course, we, had the stop, drop, and roll and the cursive that is going viral right now, and we even got T-shirts on that. But I also mentioned quicksand.
That's right.
And she says that I got that from her, that she had mentioned that to me just the week before, that she thought that quicksand was going to be a big deal. And I can't say that she's wrong. So I must give her the props and consideration there on telling me about quicksand, because she thinks that I stole that from her. And I'm not saying that she's wrong.
I'll say it. You're wrong.
But I will say this. No, the coolest thing is being able to disciple your children in the ways of the Lord and in the ways of the world, and see them adopt those things and be able to move forward in those things. Are you acting like you're sleeping?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You're a punk.
I'm sorry. I was
So,
just overcome with the fatigue from your boring answer.
I knew he was going to hate it.
Yeah, man. That's such a... He's always going to cop out.
All right.
It's just like...
All right, so let's answer it another way then, if you didn't like that one.
Which I didn't.
My favorite person I've ever discipled in this entire world is Andrew Skull.
Which makes sense.
Now, I'm going to talk about
That
you
checks
for the
out.
I'm going to talk about you for the next 10 minutes, and it's going to make you very uncomfortable. So we can choose that route, and you're going to like it for the first 15 seconds. And
that
then
answer
after
checks out to me. I'm way better than
And
your
then
kids.
after that, when I share exactly how I feel about you in front of God and everybody, you're going to start feeling weird.
Oh, wait.
No, discipleship is a big deal. It's very important to us getting to see, there's a lot of people in our church at River Life that I've discipled over the years, and now they're preachers and teachers, and I'm in charge of choosing our preachers on Wednesday nights. So when they get up there and they make reference to something that I know they learned from me, whether or not they say Clay said this or said that, but I'm hearing in their preaching things that, I have said, just last night, Brian Enlow's quoting something that came from me. And so those things make you feel good on the inside because you see the product of your discipleship. You see God pouring into you and you pouring into other people, and then having them pour into others. And that full circle right there is very, very cool. And that's something that you and I get to experience a lot. We get to see people that we've sowed a lot of time into, and now they're sowing time into other people, but they're using a lot of things that God gave us that we gave to them, and we still see them do that. In fact, I saw yesterday you discipled a guy in a way of showing him how to handle something, and he went and did it yesterday.
Yeah.
Right then, just like it, and then brought it back to you, and then you're like, man, that's really cool. Well, I'm sitting over on the sideline, and I'm like, well, that's really cool, because you were able to sow into Jimmy, and then Jimmy was able to sow into others, and he didn't wait till some obscure time to do it. He did it immediately.
Yeah.
And did exactly what you told him would be a good idea. Well, that's a cool version of discipleship.
Yeah.
You sowed directly into him something specific, then he gave it directly to other people specifically and got really good positive feedback from it. So, Andrew, out of all this time that you've been discipling people and mentoring people, who is your very favorite person that you've ever discipled?
I'll say that, as somebody that's spent a lot of time doing youth ministry, I've had a unique opportunity to father a lot of people that weren't my children. Mm-hmm. And that started at a very young age myself, because unfortunately with the divorce and split families, all the different stuff we deal with today, a lot of people don't have dads. Mm-hmm. That's just kind of my fatherlessness is among, if not the biggest problem in our culture today. And it's not just that you don't have a father, it's that he's not being a father. And so I've seen a lot of that over the years. And so, it brings me a lot of joy to see these young people growing up. And, when I think about my first ever stint in youth ministry, there's one young man who comes to mind. And it was so cool for this to be today because they just had a baby. Mm-hmm. I think like last night or this morning, but his name is Jacob Schultz. Mm-hmm. And Jacob was the first ever person, the very first time I got into youth ministry, that attached to me. He was a phenomenal young man, beautiful heart, just a good kid. And he just wanted more. He just did. And so to get to be there. Now, he did have two parents in his home. He had a fantastic family. His dad was one of the best men I ever knew. And but just to get to help pour into a young man and then see him continue to walk out his relationship with the Lord. He got married young. They got a baby. He's a good husband, a good father. And it's just like everything that you would hope would be accomplished through your relationship with a person, like I've seen done in Jacob. He has reached and then exceeded every expectation ever had for him. And I think the reason I like that so much is because that's so rare. It's so rare. Most of the people, this is a reality. Most of the people I pour into are not going to do whatever I ask of them. It's just a reality. If the very fact that I had to ask you to do it tells me that it wasn't natural to you to begin with. And so if I had to ask you, you're already going against the grain of your own nature. So it's just very hard. It's like somebody who, hey, how do I lose weight? Well, that tells me that you are in a place where you need to lose weight. Mm-hmm. The fact that you even had to ask the question, And so whatever I say next is going to be something you're not doing already. And so it's just difficult when you're in a place where you're needing to be discipled and you need to make some major life changes. And Jacob wasn't a bad kid in any way, but he's turned out as good or better than anyone I've ever met. He's just phenomenal, and for that to be my very first experience as between like a youth pastor youth relationship, he's probably the one that I feel most connected to out of all of the years, and so that one's it's just special, it's just special, and I've seen a lot of good relationships, that I've had through the years, just getting to pour into people. I was, because you just develop such an intimacy and closeness with people over these times. I used to be really, really close with Jackson Ryder. He's still a good friend of mine, but, there was a time when we were intimately connected during those years of intentional discipleship. And Joe Reasonover is another one who, that one's unique because I didn't prefer Joe. Joe was not the guy I wanted around me, and then he became the closest person to me in the world. And he's I still have relationships with these people, and we still walk in a relationship with the Lord together, but it's not so much a disciple being disciple type of relationship like it was. They're kind of coming into their own, and so it sounds so parent like, but it is real. I've kind of taken my hand off of them a little bit, tried not to, shove every decision that they make a direction, and let them kind of learn and let them figure out. And, there's a lot of that's extremely rewarding. There's a lot of it that's really hard to watch because, I use those guys as an example, not that they've done anything wrong, but it's just like those are good guys, which is why I'm using them as an example. It's easy to cite someone who went off and did something crazy. But even with people who are doing really well, and those guys are both great husbands and great fathers, there were still moments in their life that I really wanted to just jump in the middle of it and be like, hey, don't do what you're doing. Like, let's just quit what we're doing right now. And it's like, you can't always do that. And so, that's, and I'm sure, my children are still young, but I'm sure that's one of the difficulties of your children age is the same kind of thing. It's like you've discipled them, but at some point you got to let them start doing some of their own stuff. Maybe not completely, but, more and more. And as they get older and more mature, and, you got one just moved off to Dallas. You probably wouldn't have let her do that when she was 14, but now you're at the point where you needed to. And so, just seeing those different things, and 3 guys I'm really excited about right now, and there's more than 3, but just 3 that really come to mind because I guess just Jimmy, as you were talking about earlier, Jimmy's fantastic heart, very intentional. He provided that he continues on the path that he's on, the amount of people he's going to be able to reach is phenomenal. It's just, he's as genuine a guy as I've ever met. And you can't teach that. You can't teach being genuine and actually caring about people. Jimmy has a very genuine heart. And I'll throw to the other side, and this is what intimacy gets you, because you also know kind of what to look out for, but Jimmy's the person that cares so much that might be the thing that puts him in a bind, is learning where to draw lines for himself and not put himself at a point of burnout to try to appease everyone else just because he loves them. And so you learn those things through intimacy. You can't see them from afar. You learn those through intimacy. Blake Tumanero is another one. Blake has all the potential in the world to do a lot of stuff. He's got to grow in confidence of his ability to walk those things out. I don't mean like he's doing anything sinful or wrong. I'm just saying like he's got a greater call than he realizes. And if he'll start being a little bit more bold and get a little bit louder, like the ability's there, he's just got to start getting loud, and it'd be incredible to see where he transitions from there. Uteman is another one, just a crazy amount of top end potential, and I feel like he's really kind of coming into his own right now. Like he's starting to make his own strides, where no one's having to shove him, and that's the beautiful part of friendships and discipleships, is to see, like, at first you shove them a little bit, and then they learn how to walk, and they start moving on their own. Or you better watch out, some good things are happening. And so, there's somebody like Uteman, they kind of have a different difficulty they got to struggle with. It's like, hey, don't put the cart before the horse. Like they end up a lot of times having the vision and then trying to rush the timing. And so you really just got to teach them or help them understand, like, hey, look, hold the reins. It's coming. Just hang tight for a second, and really let God finish whatever he's building before, let God build the bridge before you walk across the bridge. And so, those are 3 people, Schultz being the first one, and then 3 additional people that I'm just super excited about what I'm seeing God do in their lives. And, I think that they will be stories like Schultz to me years from now.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah. So, if you don't mind, ask me the question.
Ask you the question. Your favorite person you've discipled over the years.
So I have an answer.
Okay.
I come up with it when you were talking about Schultz.
Praise God.
So the very first person that I ever discipled in that way was a young man named Broderick Hicks. So I had graduated high school. I went to college. I was majoring in music. Then I decided a couple of years just burn out. Didn't want to major in music anymore, and switched my major. And then that summer, Franklin Parish asked me to come be the band director at Franklin Parish High, and I didn't, wasn't looking to do that. I wasn't majoring in music anymore, but they told me they were going to shut the program down if I didn't. So I came back and was the band director. Now, in August when we started, I was 20. Yeah. By August the 28th, I was 21. But anyhow, a young man came up to me named Broderick Hicks, and he told me he wanted to be the manager of the band because football team had managers and basketball team had managers, but the band had never had a manager. And so we never had a manager before, but I said, sure. And he became the manager of the band. And he ended up becoming more like an assistant band director. At 16, 17 years old. He was probably nice. 17, I was 20. And he became kind of like the assistant band director. And anything that needed to be done, he did. And then he became part of our family. And then as we started going to church, and he started going to church with us. And my family owned a store, and he worked in the store. And then he got married, and, she became part of our family too. And he was just, somewhere between a son and a brother. At first it was more like a son, and then it become more like a brother. Yeah. And then his wife the same way, just like a sister. And then her mom, once Becky and I got married and had Annalise, her mom, Miss Annie, started taking care of Annalise from birth. She would come to the house and stay with Annalise, and then later with Elena. So just become a big part of our family. And we've been together ever since, And so Miss Annie recently had surgery, and 2 days ago had to come stay in the nursing home for a little while as a skilled patient till, she can get better and feel better and stuff. And so I went in there and visited her on Wednesday, and some ladies come in and asked me, who I was, and she introduced me as her son. Yeah. And they started asking questions, and we our story never changed, Yeah. And Butch is the same way, and I call him Butch. And so just getting to see him, later on, now they have a big family and 10 kids and been going to church with us all these years, and, getting to see what God's done. And like you said, over a period of time, he becomes this man and he starts making decisions, and, I just get to, interject every once in a while. But for a long time there, he didn't do anything without me and him doing it together, yeah. And us working together. And I think that process that you were talking about is so important that, when we start discipleship, it can be a little awkward at first because if they were doing all the right things, they wouldn't be coming to you, to seek help anyhow. The person needing to lose weight, number one, they had to be doing something wrong, or they wouldn't come, because they wouldn't need to lose weight. But at the same time, there was something inside of them that says, hey, this guy can probably help me with this better than I can help myself. Yeah. Well, that takes some humility. Just like yesterday, Jimmy could have decided what to do with them guys on his own. Sure. But instead, he sought, your opinion. Mm-hmm. And then not only did he seek your opinion, you gave it to him. and he didn't say, "Oh, that sounds pretty good" or whatever. I'll see, maybe. No, he used it right then. The same morning before lunch.
Yeah.
And so that's, discipleship can start a little awkward because developing a relationship. But like you said, also, it can turn into one of the most intimate relationships that you've ever had.
Sure.
Sure. And, I'm going to get in trouble with this.
Do it.
But I see on Facebook all the time that,
You are gonna get in
people
trouble.
say, I married my best friend. Or I saw it the other day, 2 weeks from now, I get to marry my best friend. I always kind of seen that as kind of odd. I understand that, hey, me and Miss Becky are as tight as we possibly can and everything. And the two have become one.
Yeah.
But there's something special about having other best friends. People where you can pour into them and they can pour into you. And I think that gets lost in things a while. Hey, we do want to be super tight with our spouse, and we want to be able to share, things with our spouse and all that kind of stuff. But it's something special about having best friends and about having people that you're discipling in other than just your spouse. You know what I mean? If you don't have a best friend and your spouse is your best friend, who you going to borrow money from?
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Not me.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just thinking about that. I hadn't thought about it 100%, but it's kind of been in my mind for a few days. Hey, we're not saying anything against the marriage relationship, but we believe in that stronger than almost anybody, and we understand that. But you also need some other friends. You need people that you can bounce things off of. You need things besides just your spouse.
Man, you said a mouthful, brother.
There you go.
I have mentored and counseled many a couple over the years, and that I would say, I'm going to try to be conservative, legitimately, but I would say at least 20% of the time, so 1 out of 5 of those couples, it stems from one of the spouses not allowing the spouse to have any sort of friendships outside of the spousal relationship. And it is a dividing sword like you wouldn't believe. It's just not good. It wasn't intended to be that way. It was never intended to be us four and no more. You were made for community. You know what I mean? Like, you were literally created to expand the gospel. How can you do that if the furthest the gospel goes is your living room? Like,
Right.
That's not expanding the gospel. And so whether you like it or not, those relationships aren't just fun, which they are fun. They can be fun. They're also a calling.
Yeah.
They're necessary, and so if you're shutting your spouse down from operating in those relationships, you are doing something sinful. I don't care what anyone else tells you. You are wrong, and I will literally wage war on this fact. You are doing something sinful if you're preventing your spouse from having other relationships. That spouse, man or a woman, I've seen it happen on both sides, for the record. People assume that it's always the woman. It is more often the woman, but it is not always the woman. I've seen possessive men the same.
Yeah.
And but it is absolutely sinful to keep your spouse from having those outside relationships, because they have a calling on their life to reach people. And you're saying, I don't care what you think you're called to. You're not doing that. That's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good. And whether they're experiencing it from a spiritual perspective, which is less common, that's kind of the root of the pushback. It's like, oh, I have a calling. You're not. It's usually not. It's usually just that they're not enjoying life. Man, you don't want your spouse to feel like a prisoner in their own home.
Right.
That's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. And so,
there's a lot of things that there's nobody I would rather do those things with than Miss Becky.
sure.
But if I'm really wanting to go play golf, she's not the number one person on my list. I'm wanting to go play golf with somebody that we can go play golf.
Yep.
Now if she ever wants to learn how to play golf, then I would love to teach her how to play golf. But if I'm going to go play golf, it isn't to teach her how to play golf, it's to go play golf. Or if I'm going to go, play racquetball and stuff, there's a lot of times, I'll ask her if she wants to go to a ball game with me, and she's like, don't you have some friends that you'd rather take to a ball game?
Yeah.
She doesn't mind going every once in a while to some outside ball game, but she'd rather me go with another friend. Well, if I go with another friend, man, we're going to talk about life, and we're going to talk about God, and we're going to talk about things that they need to talk about. We're going to talk about things that I need to talk about. I mean, just like this morning, I needed some help in a situation, and I called my brother Jeff Boughton to ask his opinion of what needed to happen. Well, how did I know that Jeff would be the right person to call? Because I have an intimate relationship with Jeff.
Yep.
And so because I knew that, this is Jeff's area of expertise, I could call him and get a great answer. Now, if I would have called Becky, she would have helped in any way that she could, but it still wouldn't have been as good of an answer as Jeff Boughton could give.
Sure.
Now, come to find out, I'd actually done exactly what I was asking Jeff if could be done before. And he reminded me of that.
Nice.
But I'd forgot. But anyhow, it's just good to have various relationships. And like I said, I didn't even know we were going to talk about this. This is not something that you and I have even talked about. It's just been on my mind lately that I've been seeing these people say, I married my best friend, or it's so great to be married to my best friend. Hey, and I understand that. And Becky and I are best friends. But I also have additional best friends that are in different ways.
Yeah.
And look, we got a great marriage. In 1 month, we're going to be married 25 years. And we enjoy our time with each other more than we do with anybody else. But I also enjoy doing other things with other people. I enjoy conversations with other people. I enjoy being able to, talk about things that you don't necessarily talk with your spouse about. Not that it's anything bad. It's just It's just they might not have the best opinion on those things.
Yeah.
If I'm going to talk about discipling people and reaching people for Christ, I'd rather talk to you.
Sure.
This is what you do every day.
Yeah.
She loves on people in a different way, but you disciple people.
Yep.
Every day. I mean, that's something that I want to talk to you about. When I was mentioning that I really enjoy discipling my kids and seeing the results of that. Well, there's certain things that all three of them are better at and smarter on and more efficient in than almost anybody else I know. So if I want to talk to somebody about those things, I know who I want to talk to about it. Elena is running the biggest community event in all of Louisiana, the biggest one that they've ever had in all of Louisiana, and she is in charge of it. She is the director of it. It's going to be 1,800 volunteers that are going to be working in like 80 or 90 different locations next week. Well, if I want to talk to somebody about organizing and, pulling people together and stuff, who better to talk to than Elena? She's doing it in a bigger way than anybody else right now. If I want to talk to somebody about getting the most out of somebody and looking at stats and looking at, how to grow somebody and those kind of things,
Coop.
I'm going to look at Coop.
Yep.
Because this dude's analyzing that each and every day. I mean, he's looking at stats. He's looking at how this correlates with that and how this is going to happen with that. And then, of course, we got Annalise that's going to find everything that everybody else missed.
Yep.
If we want something specific and looking at this, she's the best for it. And so having all those relationships and being able to do all those things is really, really cool. And so, and we do marriage counseling all the time, so I'm hoping nobody's taking this the wrong way. But you need somebody that you're sowing into their lives other than just your spouse.
Yep, that's right.
And that's the reason why when it said, who's your greatest person that you disciple, that's why I didn't say Miss Becky.
Yep.
Is because I want people to see that we need to expand that out. Now, look, does it start at home? Yes, it starts at home. Nobody throw any stones there. We understand you minister at home first. I understand that. But we also need to be going outside of that too. And then the point that you made about just having relationships outside of the family unit.
Yeah.
Man, that is so important. It's so important to have guy time. It's so important to have girl time. Girls can talk about stuff that I really just don't want to hear about at all.
We don't care.
And when we do have to do those things because you make us, we try really hard, but we really don't even offer a good opinion.
Yeah. It'd be like if I tried really hard at knitting. I don't know anything about knitting.
Right.
I will give it my best, but we're going to be in the same place when I'm finished as we were when we started, maybe worse.
Right.
And so that's kind of how my try happens when we're talking about things I just don't understand. There are mindsets and things that are happening in relationships, especially as it pertains like woman to woman. Mm-hmm. I don't understand how y'all's relationships work.
Right.
I'm being dead serious. I know that this sounds like I'm pleading ignorance. I do not understand how one woman and another woman's relationship connects because it is so foreign to me when I hear it talked about.
Yes.
And so when you want to try to piece all that together for me and tell me that this is what's happening and this is what's going on, I can't even fathom how you got there.
Right.
Like, it does not make sense.
Yeah, because they're talking trash about what one woman did to another woman and what their opinion was in that one, and then all of a sudden the woman walks up and is like, "Hey, girl, how you doing?" Yeah, that ain't us.
I'm so thankful my wife doesn't gossip. I would not be able to deal with it. I really don't. There's a lot of great things about Courtney, lots of them. I could make a pretty impressive list. But it's very possible that that's my favorite thing about her.
Amen.
She doesn't even participate.
Amen.
And so it's, oh man, but just the stuff that I hear she's not gossiping about it. She's just telling me, hey, this is what happened today.
Right.
And I'm like, oh no, like this sounds awful. Well,
we talk about us just not understanding those things. Something I don't know if we talked about on here or not, but I've decided to try something new in my life, and that is to grow out my fingernails. So instead of biting my fingernails or peeling on my fingernails, I've been growing out my fingernails. Well, because of that, I don't know anything about it. So I've had to ask Becky some questions. I've had to ask Stephanie some questions, and they really just look at me like I'm ignorant because I don't know, how to sand fingernails down. I don't even know how to cut fingernails properly. The first time they asked me if I wanted to be square shaped or rounded or gravel. I don't even know what they were saying. I don't understand all that. So all I know is I'm not trying to bite my fingernails right now. But then they go and get manicures, and they can get fake nails, long nails. They can get snap-on nails or painted nails or all this. All I want to do is just not bite my fingernails, But now I'm having to deal with stuff because I can't even type on a keyboard properly. So, but I'm not trying to learn all these women things. But a woman needs to talk to another woman about those things. And if you do not have good, strong female relationships, get you one. And guys, if you don't have good, strong male relationships, get you one.
I was hoping you were going to say female relationships with the guys as well. No, man, I agree. And you talked about having somebody besides your spouse to pour into. That is extremely important, but it's equally important to have somebody besides your spouse pouring into you.
Amen.
And, everybody should be part of two tiers of relationship. One relationship where you're more of the mentor, and another relationship where you're more of the mentee. Mm-hmm. If you're not in both of those relationships, you are doing yourself a disservice and limiting your ability to learn and grow. You got to be in both. And, man, it's just there's so many different things to talk about regarding that particular subject because of all of the problems I've seen it cause. And it's really, expansive. It starts small usually, but the reality is like you can operate within a relationship just between you and your spouse and kids if you have kids. That can work until something negative comes up. Mm. The minute that something negative comes up, that whole situation implodes because you've got no outlet to talk to. And mind you, when I say outlet, let me be very clear about something. I'm not talking about someone to vent your frustrations
That's right.
to. That is not what I mean.
No.
I mean a genuine sounding board of wise counsel.
Yep.
Not oh, this happened and she did this and I. That's not the kind of outlet I'm referring to. That's a terrible thing. I think that's worse than not having one. You got to have wise counsel. You got to have people that will give you wisdom. And if there's someone who's mentoring you, they're going to give you wise counsel from their experience. But here's the cool thing. If you've been mentoring someone else, they can also give you wise counsel in those moments because they're going to have a front row seat to your life.
Yes.
And that's part of a lot of times, perspective is such a big deal. If you witness an accident up close, there's only so much you saw. Somebody standing, 50 feet back from there is going to see some other things that you didn't see. And so those change of perspectives are important. And so if the only people who can talk about what's going on is you and your spouse, because no one else is got any sort of perspective or
Privileged to that
idea
information, right.
of what happened, you got a very limited scope of addressing it, what you see, what they see. And you both think that you're right. So who wins? Who wins? Well, I'll tell you what happens. One of the two of you is going to fold your hand and resent the other one for making them.
Yep.
That's how it happens. That's how it happens. This is not an opinion, for the record. I'm not giving you my opinion on what could happen. I'm giving you, this is exactly what I've watched happen. I don't know, of all the counseling sessions I've done,
Right.
probably 20, 30 couples of those, that's the primary issue. And so, not an opinion, that's how it happens.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely happens that way. Yeah, and the whole venting, you never want to do that because you vent to a guy that you don't know that well. He gives you some really bad advice, and then you do it, and now we're way worse than we were before.
There's way more fish in the sea, bro.
Yeah. Or you vent to a female.
Oh, yeah.
And
end up
we
in a
know
bind in a hurry.
that can, so we don't want venting at all. We want to be able to have strong, established relationships. Now, here's what I see a lot. I see couples that are, like you said, just so into just each other, and our four no more, right? And then the issue comes like what you're talking about, and then they come to somebody to talk to somebody. He doesn't really have anybody. She doesn't really have anybody. So they come to a neutral party, and that would be me, right? Mm-hmm. So they come to a neutral party, but they have to give 3 hours worth of background before we can ever even get to the current state because we don't have a relationship.
In 2006, she forgot to record the big game.
It's exactly right. I think I heard that one yesterday. And so, but because we don't have a relationship, then we got to have all this background in order to understand, or they think that we do. Because they haven't been talking to anybody, so now they want to say everything that they wish they'd been saying to somebody this whole time.
Well, and they're one-upping each other because when
Every
the first
single time.
person is saying what happened, they feel like they've got to give more of a reason for why they were that. And so it turns into...
Yeah, and so you never really get to be able to pour into their lives because they don't want to develop a relationship with you. They just want to throw all this out, have you fix their problem, and then never see you again.
Yeah.
And that's really difficult. So I think that it's more of a value in relationships issue than anything. I think it can start out as control. Because one spouse doesn't want the other one influenced by other people. They want to influence that person, and it starts out by control. But it can also turn into a disdain for outside relationships as a whole and not want to develop those, which becomes really difficult.
Yeah. And here's this is going to be my closing thoughts on this particular matter because this is how this story ends for so many couples. Usually, one of them just swallows the situation and says, it's not worth the trouble. I'm just going to be here. And the other person is convinced that the relationship is working this way because the other one's not complaining about it anymore. And in their mind, I knew it would work. I was right. We've got a good relationship. And they don't even realize the other person is broken on the inside. They are a shell of who they used to be. And I'll say things like that to people, and then they'll go home and be like, "That's not how you feel, is it?" And they'll go, "Oh, of course not. That guy is crazy. I cannot believe he was." Of course they're not going to tell you that.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you that for the same reason they didn't tell you beforehand.
That's right.
It's more trouble to them than it's worth.
Yep.
And man, you don't be that spouse.
Well,
Don't
you
be
know,
that spouse.
I tell you one thing that I've had to do, but we're all real. You know, we believe in accountability and stuff, but I've had to go to several of my best friends over life, and then them come to me and be like, "Look, you know, your spouse is not, you know, real happy in this area, or your spouse wished that you would do something better in this area." Because their spouse has come to me.
Yeah.
Now, why did their spouse come to me? Because they know that I have such a strong relationship with their spouse that I can talk to them.
That's right.
That's the other side of it. You know, and this happens quite often. I'm not talking about couples that I'm counseling. I'm talking about just good, strong relationships that we have. In fact, one couple that, you know, just good friends with and stuff, if the male goes and pitches an idea to her, something new that he wants to do in their business or their family or whatever, most of the time she says, "What does Clay think about this?" You know,
Yeah.
and if he hadn't asked me yet, she tells him to come ask me.
Yeah.
You know, or I've had spouses come to me and be like, "Hey, look, I've tried to talk to so-and-so about this. They ain't really hearing me, or I really don't think that I can say this. Can you talk to them about it?" And if I have a good enough relationship with them, then sure I can. You know, don't have a problem with it. And so it's not a negative
Yeah.
that they have outside best friends and confidants. It's a positive if it's the right ones.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
That's right.
if it's the right ones, just like me calling Jeff this morning, I knew exactly who to call. You know, it involved water, and it involved, you know, a truck, a tractor, this or that, you know, whatever. I knew, hey, he's going to give me the best assessment. You know, I talked to somebody else, wasn't even asking their opinion. They're like, "Oh, I'd drive my car through that." Well, they were wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they drive the car through it, but it would be broke forever. You know, so I didn't need that opinion.
Yeah.
I needed to know, do we need a truck or do we need a tractor? You know, where
right.
are we at? And so because we have those relationships, we know who to call and stuff. I think my wife is very grateful that I have good, strong relationships. You know, like I said, I have individual relationships with each of my children, and not just as a whole, but individual. I know which one would rather do this with dad or that. Same way with my friends, and I think my wife is very happy about that.
And that also, you know, kind of leads into why premarital counseling is such a big deal. Because if you go through real premarital counseling and you learn how to open up those lines of communication with your spouse to where you can just be honest in a way that's not hurtful, man, it's such a big deal for those to be open lines. You know, most of the marriages that struggle that I know of didn't go through that type of premarital counseling. Usually,
It's a lost art.
oh, sure.
Yeah.
Usually premarital counseling nowadays, and not exclusively, I know some people do a fantastic job, but it's few and far between. Usually it's a love languages type deal, and I'm not saying that's not important. Learning how your spouse receives love is a good thing, but that's usually kind of the extent of it. It's like, oh, well, this is their love language. Just try to love them this way, and, you know, kind of be on your way. But they never actually teach them how to talk.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, when I'm doing premarital counseling with people, I try to not like draw out some of their problems, but I try to just get them talking about stuff. You know, hey, what's a difficulty y'all've worked through together? You know, How did y'all go about doing that? And I'll just kind of prod at certain, parts of those conversations and how they were handled. It's like, okay, so you did that. How did you feel when he approached it that way? Is that something you received well? Would you rather he did it a different way, And so I just kind of teach them like, hey, this is how the other person's hearing you. And I let them essentially arrive there on their own, just with me kind of guiding them into it. And so real premarital counseling, that's a big part of it, is teaching them how to do that. And the couples that I know that have struggled most recently, I know for sure didn't do that. They didn't go through that. I either know they didn't do the counseling, or I know who counseled them, and I know that they don't do that. Yep. And there was one particular situation that I was supposed to do the premarital counseling with the person, kind of got vetoed by someone else, and I was like, ooh, man, like I understand why, but I feel like they're going to really wish that I did this later. And then it ended up that was one of the primary problems that they had. Mm-hmm. And I was like, dadgummit, man, if I could have just been able to sit and talk with them, I think that we probably could have dodged that.
Hey, and for the record, I really don't like the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
And it's not because I don't believe in loving somebody the way they want to be loved. We talk about that all the time.
Sure.
We talked about that last week, ministering to people where they are,
That's
loving
right.
people the way they want to be loved. It's not that. It's that when people go through that class or read that book and they come up with their love language, then they think that every time their spouse isn't loving them like their love language, then something's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's not true. And another thing is people change over time. I change over time. Opinions change. The way I want people to handle me sometimes changes the way I handle other people. And so you can just get in a rut of thinking, well, I can only be loved if I'm being loved this way, or I can only receive it if I'm being loved this way. And I know couples that book and that sessions, that mindset, it's not just the book, it's the way they took it, but has really caused major problems in their marriage.
Yes.
So a better way is like what you're talking about, to ask the questions. Okay, so what areas are we finding difficulty in? What areas are we finding victories in? What are we having to change? What are we having to move around, instead of just, how do you want to be loved? Now we're going to find how they want to be loved by asking those questions. But
right.
Instead of just categorizing it in one way here, we're getting there in a different way, and I think we see a lot better results doing it the way that you're talking about.
Well, you just said the whole deal is communication is always the problem. The reason the 5 love languages took off is because people forgot how to communicate. And so if you and your spouse communicate extremely well, you don't need to know what their love language is.
Right.
Everything that they need, everything that they want is going to be very clearly communicated in a way that's not pushy, that's not about themselves, if communication's done properly. If it's not done properly, well, I guess you better have a love language or something. You know what I mean? You're going to need something to go off of.
Fallback plan.
Yeah, and I'm not against the love languages either. It's just, here's the thing. The love languages is about you learning how to serve your spouse. That's what I think that was the intention.
Yeah,
maybe
that's what it's supposed to be.
Maybe I'm wrong,
Right.
but I think the intention was you learn how to serve your spouse. What it turned into was me learning how my spouse is failing to serve me.
That's it.
That's a bad thing.
Yeah, it's a bad thing.
It'd almost be better if you only learned your spouse's love language and somehow could not know your own.
But nobody does that.
No.
They're going to start with the intent of helping their spouse, but before they even get to the end, well, which one am I?
That's right. Yeah. And so God's love for us is without necessity of reciprocation. And so God loved us even though some of us won't choose to ever love him back. The sacrifice was still given, the love was still given. And so your job as a spouse is to love your spouse regardless of whether or not you think that they deserve it. And so I don't show my wife her love languages as long as she's showing me mine. That's not how that works. Right. That's not the right kind of love. You love regardless, without expectation. And so if you do that, Yeah, you don't need all of the
That's right.
you don't need all the fancy stuff.
What an episode, dude.
Yeah, it took a turn. None of that was in my notes. So we'll just
None of that was in our notes.
So we'll just use these notes for next week.
Yeah, I apologize about the best friend deal. I probably should have mentioned that ahead of time. I don't know. They just kind of kept coming.
Yeah, that's good. Well, hey, you got anything else? I'm feeling good about it.
Oh, I just had a terrible thought.
Share it.
You know, you said that.
Oh, wait. Before you do,
Go ahead.
Annalise Elena Cooper, you are no longer the person that he enjoyed discipling the most. I wanted to make that very clear.
Half of an episode
You
later.
have been replaced. Sorry.
By Uncle Butch.
Yeah, that's right. Continue.
Your Uncle Butch replaced
I want to
you.
make sure I got that in there before the episode comes.
No, you said that, we could create shirts that were episode specific.
Oh, yes.
Now, what we don't want is a shirt that says, "My spouse is not my best friend." We don't want to do that.
That's a pretty good shirt.
That's too controversial.
Dude, I'm not afraid of a little controversy.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, man, we got some. We could make some interesting shirts for the week. I could do like a man and woman's hand handcuffed together, and just have the Jesus Cartel logo underneath it.
Hey, look, we love y'all, and we thank y'all for listening to the Jesus Cartel.
Yeah. Till next time.